They won't admit it out loud, but you feel it. That subtle shift in the room the moment you walk in. The conversation that was buzzing just a second ago suddenly thins out. The laughter fades. People look away. Their body language tightens, and the energy just drops. And you're left standing there, running a mental checklist, wondering, wait, what did I do? What did I say? Here's the thing. It's not about what you did. It's about who you are. It's about the silent, invisible energy your presence brings into a space, and what that energy awakens in other people. You've probably been told your whole life that you're too much of something. You're too intense, too quiet, too deep. Maybe they say your energy is just hard to read, hard to pin down, and even harder to forget. But what if what they're feeling isn't a problem with you? What if, as the legendary psychoanalyst Carl Jung believed, your presence isn't a flaw, but a revelation? You carry something that most people don't quite recognize. It's not charisma. It's not charm. It's clarity. A kind of psychological force. A stillness that has a strange habit of stripping away the masks that people wear. This stillness unsettles them, not because you're dangerous, but because you're real. In a world where almost everyone is playing a role, seeking approval, or hiding from their own shadow, your authenticity is a spotlight. And people flinch, not because they see a threat in you, but because your presence reflects back everything they are desperately trying to avoid in themselves. Their uncertainty, their insecurities, their deep-seated need to perform. So they shrink, they gossip, they keep their distance. Carl Jung dedicated his life to studying this exact kind of energy, the quiet gravity of a person who has done the difficult inner work of integrating their unconscious mind. He called it the mirror effect of someone who has truly faced themselves. In this video, we're going to break down the 13 signs that your presence is silently unsettling to others. Not because there's something wrong with you, but because you are psychologically awake. And in a world that's largely built on illusion, nothing is more terrifying to the unprepared than someone who can see clearly. Now, when we talk about a person's presence, most people think of an aura. They picture something mystical, a glowing cloud of colors that only psychics can see. But Carl Jung saw it very differently. To him, your aura wasn't a layer of light. It was your psychological field, an invisible force that is shaped not by crystals or chakras, but by your unconscious mind. He believed that every single one of us radiates a silent influence, a kind of psychic gravity that goes far beyond our words, our facial expressions, or even our intentions. And this field is constantly being molded by the parts of you that are hidden, repressed, and denied. This means your aura isn't created by who you pretend to be. It's created by who you actually are, especially the parts of yourself you've had the courage to look at. When you finally confront your shadow, your flaws, your past traumas, your deepest truths, something profound begins to shift in you, energetically. You stop chasing validation from others. You stop leaking that energy of neediness. You stop contorting yourself to fit in. And in that quiet, internal transformation, your presence begins to carry a certain weight. It's not loud or aggressive, but it's undeniable. You become someone people feel before they even understand you. Someone who doesn't need to say much, because your silence says more than enough. Jung called this the unconscious transmission of the self, the way your very being can communicate far more than your personality ever could. This is why people might stare at you a little too long. It's why they might struggle to explain that nervous, fidgety feeling they get around you. It's why they feel judged by you, even when you haven't said a single critical word. It's not that you're giving off bad vibes. It's that your energy is integrated, and most people have never encountered that kind of wholeness before. You didn't learn how to intimidate. You learned how to be honest with yourself. And honesty, Jung warned, operates on a rare frequency, one that can only come from someone who's done the inner work. Sign number 1. People compete with you silently. You're not trying to outshine anyone. You're not bragging. You're not showing off. Heck, you don't even realize there's a game being played. But for some reason, people around you suddenly feel the need to win. All of a sudden, they're name-dropping, listing their accomplishments, talking a little louder, and trying just a bit too hard. And you're just standing there, sipping your coffee, wondering why the energy suddenly feels so competitive. You never signed up for a contest, but your presence just started one. Carl Jung's work explains this perfectly. When someone carries an integrated energy, the kind that comes from deep inner alignment, it's deeply unsettling to people whose identity is built on external comparison. Your self-assurance isn't a performance. You're not trying to dominate the conversation. You're just clear. And that clarity sends insecure people into a low-key panic. They feel a compulsive need to prove something, not because you've openly challenged them, but because your very existence challenges the fragile story they've built about themselves. To the insecure ego, your calm feels like a threat. Your stillness looks like a power play. Your natural detachment seems like a form of superiority. And so, the ego scrambles. It competes. It tries to reclaim territory that was never even contested. This is why you might notice people subtly trying to one-up you, correct you on minor details, or talk over you. It's why they might get defensive when you simply express a thought. It's not about you. It's about the identity their ego is desperately trying to protect. You're not triggering a rivalry. You're triggering a realization that a quiet, unshakable confidence exists. A confidence that doesn't need to make a lot of noise. And that kind of presence can't be faked. You don't need to play their game because you've already stepped off the board. And for those still trapped in the illusion of winning and losing, your peaceful presence feels like a silent, existential threat. Sign number 2. Your presence instantly kills small talk. You're not trying to be rude. You nod, you smile, you say all the socially acceptable things. How about this weather? Any plans for the weekend? But somehow, the conversation just dies on the vine. The air gets thick, the energy shifts, and people can feel it, even if they can't name it. You're not being cold, you're just being real. And your energy doesn't know how to participate in the fake stuff. Carl Jung believed that people who've connected with their unconscious develop what he called psychological attunement. It's a natural sensitivity to what's authentic and what's not. And that sensitivity lives in your aura. You don't have to say, "This feels fake." Your presence does it for you, without a single word. Surface-level chatter, the weather, the latest celebrity gossip, the scripted pleasantries, it just doesn't match your frequency. Your presence, by its very nature, demands a certain level of depth. Not through force, but through sheer contrast. People feel this. Their subconscious picks up on it. Your stillness calls out their noise. Your calm exposes their performance. And so, they shrink. They stumble over their words. They get quiet, or they make an excuse to walk away, thinking to themselves, "Wow, that person is intense." But it's not intensity. It's alignment. You've spent time in silence. You've sat with your own shadow. You've asked yourself the big, uncomfortable questions that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. As a result, your presence now carries weight. Not the weight of arrogance, but the gravity of someone who doesn't waste words on things that don't matter. And in a world that is addicted to distraction, that kind of energy is a script killer. It ends the performance and exposes the empty space between words, and that's usually where the truth begins. Sign number 3. You unmask the hidden agenda in others. This is a strange one. You don't accuse anyone. You don't expose secrets. You don't even need to speak. But somehow, People just feel seen in your presence, and not in a way they find comfortable. The manipulator suddenly grows quiet. The charmer stumbles on their words. The person who is being overly nice for no reason suddenly seems unsure of themselves. Why? Because your energy sees right through the performance. Jung believed that when you integrate your own shadow, you develop a kind of psychological X-ray. It's an inner vision that cuts through the performance and pierces straight to the motive. You're not judging them. You're not even consciously analyzing them. You are simply present. But your presence sends a clear, unspoken signal. The games don't work here. And so, the mask starts to slip. The script feels stale. People who rely on manipulation, charm, or control to navigate the world can feel this shift instantly. They don't know why, but something in them pulls back. They might get defensive, awkward, or even a little hostile. It's not because you caught them in a lie. It's because your presence reminded them that they've been performing for so long, they might not even know who they are without the act. And for someone who is clinging to an illusion, the most terrifying thing they can feel is visible. You didn't call them out. You didn't confront them. You just were. But simply being real in a room full of masks is a confrontation in itself. Your aura doesn't expose people with words. It exposes them through contrast. And when someone's entire identity is a performance, your silence feels like a spotlight. Sign number 4. People feel judged by you, even when you say nothing. This one can be incredibly frustrating. You haven't criticized them. You haven't corrected them. You haven't even flinched at what they said. You're just listening, holding space. But you can still feel it, that subtle wave of defensiveness coming off them. You see their posture tighten, their tone get a little sharp. They accuse you of judging them. And you're left completely baffled, because you know in your heart that judgment was the furthest thing from your mind. So, what is going on here? Your silence is speaking louder than their masks. Your presence doesn't need to utter a word, because on an energetic level, it's already saying everything. Carl Jung taught that when you've integrated your unconscious, when you've made peace with your own flaws, your own darkness, and your own truth, you begin to radiate something deeply unsettling to those who haven't. It's not aggression. It's not superiority. It's alignment. And to someone who is out of alignment with themselves, your simple, peaceful presence can feel like an interrogation. Your stillness becomes a mirror. Your direct but gentle eye contact feels too raw, too penetrating. Your calmness can even feel accusatory. Not because you are condemning them, but because they are suddenly, painfully aware of everything they've buried within themselves. They are judging themselves and projecting that judgment onto you. People feel judged by you, not because you're looking down on them, but because you're not performing with them. Think about it. Most social interactions are a dance of mutual validation. We subtly reassure each other that our masks are believable. When your presence doesn't offer that validation, when it remains neutral and calm, it can feel like a rejection to someone whose identity depends on that external applause. Your silence feels like disapproval. Your peace feels like a threat to their carefully constructed reality. They'll say you were being cold, too quiet, or unfriendly. But what they often really mean is, your presence makes me feel things I'm not ready to feel. You make me aware of my own phoniness, and I don't like it. You don't need to speak to challenge someone. Your very presence creates a stark contrast between who they are and who they pretend to be. And that contrast doesn't lie. It's a feeling that lingers long after your conversation is over. Sign number 5. You trigger envy without even trying. This is another confusing one. You're not flaunting your successes. You're not competing. You're not even talking about yourself. But somehow, you still become a target for resentment. You see it in the sidelong glances, the fake compliments that have a little too much sugar on them, the passive-aggressive comments that come out of nowhere. You can feel it, that unspoken, simmering resentment from people who barely even know you. Here's the Jungian take. When a person is internally aligned, when they radiate a sense of peace that doesn't ask for anyone's permission, they become an unconscious challenge to everyone who is not. The envy you trigger isn't necessarily about what you have, it's about who you are. Your calm is intimidating to those who are riddled with anxiety. Your quiet confidence feels like arrogance to those who secretly doubt themselves. Your authenticity is offensive to those still living behind a mask. It's not because you're doing anything wrong. It's because your very existence is a mirror, reflecting back to them what they feel is missing in their own lives. You don't have to say a single word. Your energy alone says, "I have faced myself." And for someone who is running from their own reflection, that simple truth can sting. You might notice how people try to twist your greatest strengths into flaws. They'll call your inner peace detachment. They'll label your clarity as self-righteousness. They'll mistake your comfort with solitude for arrogance. But this isn't really about you. It's a defense mechanism. It's about what they feel inside themselves when you are around. By turning your virtues into vices, they can justify their own unease and avoid the difficult work of looking inward. You are a mirror, and mirrors don't lie. You trigger envy not because you are perfect or have a perfect life, but because you carry something increasingly rare in our fragmented world: inner wholeness. And in a world filled with people who feel broken or incomplete, that wholeness isn't just seen, it's felt. And what is truly felt can never be ignored. Sign number 6. People act differently the moment you're around. Picture this. You're about to walk into a break room at work. You can hear loud laughter, a boisterous story being told. The energy is high, loose, and informal. Then, you step through the door, and something immediately shifts. The volume drops. The storyteller's tone changes, becomes more reserved. People's postures stiffen up. The air itself feels a little heavier. And you didn't even say a word. Carl Jung believed that when someone carries an integrated presence, a self that has been forged in the fires of shadow work and inner truth, their very existence disrupts the performance of others. You don't have to challenge anyone. Your presence does it for you. Why? Because you bring a completely different energy into the space. It's an energy that isn't chasing attention, that doesn't beg for a sense of belonging, and that doesn't need to impress anyone to feel valid. That energy creates a powerful contrast, and most people are not prepared to feel it. The loudest person in the room suddenly becomes quieter. The self-proclaimed alpha or leader starts fumbling their words. The group dynamic that felt so easy and comfortable just moments before now feels uncertain, unstable, even a little exposed. The reason is simple. You don't operate within their unwritten social script. You're not playing the game. Since you're not performing, your presence makes their performance painfully obvious, at least to themselves. They don't consciously know why they feel different around you, but they feel it on a gut level. It's not about fear. It's about a silent pressure, the pressure to be real. Your presence doesn't ask for truth. It creates an environment where falsehood feels awkward. And in a world built on social masks and polite fictions, that kind of genuine presence doesn't just stand out. It has the power to reshape the entire energy of a room. Sign number 7. Fake authority feels threatened by you. You've seen this happen before. You're in a meeting or a group setting, and the person in charge suddenly gets defensive around you. You see that subtle shift in their posture, the way they start correcting you on trivial things, even when you haven't challenged them. Or worse, they go the other route. They avoid you, exclude you from conversations, or pretend not to notice your contributions. Your presence simply makes them feel less in control. Jung's philosophy suggests that real power comes from within. It comes from integration, not domination. And when someone with that kind of authentic, internal power walks into a room, those who rely on external status feel it immediately. The fake authority, the person whose power comes from a job title, an inflated ego, or the need to control others, is deeply threatened by you. You don't instinctively bow to invisible hierarchies. You don't shrink yourself to make others feel more important. And you don't give automatic, unearned respect to titles, roles, or egos. That alone is dangerous to them. You haven't broken any rules. You simply don't need their rules to define you. And that makes people who live for that kind of validation feel completely exposed. Your quiet self-assurance threatens their entire operating system, not because you're actively challenging them, but because your energy simply doesn't bend to theirs. It's not rebellion, it's self-possession. And in environments that are built on compliance and ego-stroking, your self-possession feels like an act of resistance. You'll notice how these types of authority figures might try to test you. They'll subtly undermine you, try to out-talk you in front of others, or attempt to diminish your presence. But none of it really works, does it? That's because your power isn't performative, it's psychological. And psychological power doesn't flinch. You don't need to raise your voice or prove your worth. You just need to exist fully. And those who are only pretending to lead will feel it, because your presence sends them a terrifyingly clear message. I don't fear your image, because I can see right through it. Sign number 4. People feel judged by you, even when you say nothing. Sign number 8. You're seen as dangerous when you set boundaries. For a long time, you were kind, you were present, you gave your time, your energy, and your attention freely. And then, one day, you didn't. You said, no. You pulled back your energy. You protected your space. And in the eyes of some people, you transformed overnight. Suddenly, you're cold, distant, selfish, or arrogant. The entire narrative about you flips, not because you actually hurt anyone, but because you stopped letting them use you. Carl Jung believed that those who have integrated their shadow no longer operate from a desperate need to be liked by everyone. Why? Because they've already made peace with the idea of not belonging. When you finally set a healthy boundary, you are fundamentally shifting a power dynamic. You are reminding people, gently but firmly, that your energy is yours to give, not theirs to take. And for those who were only drawn to your endless softness, your new boundary doesn't feel like self-care. It feels like a betrayal. Your no feels like a personal attack. Not because it's cruel, but because it's sovereign. You don't over-explain. You don't desperately apologize. You simply stop allowing what no longer feels right for you. This makes people deeply uncomfortable, especially those who subconsciously depended on your availability to avoid their own emptiness. They'll say, you've changed. They'll say you're closed off, or that you think you're better than them. But the truth is, you just stopped playing the role they cast you in. You reclaimed your own energy, and people do not like losing access to a resource they never truly appreciated in the first place. You're not dangerous, you're just no longer easy to manipulate. And in a world where control often hides behind the language of connection, a simple boundary can look like an act of rebellion. But it's not. It's the beginning of true self-respect. Sign number 9. Others project their darkness onto you. You were just being kind. You listened. You showed up. You gave them space to be themselves. And somehow, you became the villain in their story. They started saying you were manipulative, cold, passive-aggressive, hard to read, maybe even toxic. And you're left completely bewildered, trying to figure out how they got that from your interaction, when all you did was exist honestly. Carl Jung had a specific name for this phenomenon: projection. It's what happens when a person cannot face their own shadow, their own insecurities, guilt, or manipulative tendencies, so they unconsciously assign those traits to someone else. You became a blank canvas for them. You didn't judge them. You didn't attack them. You simply reflected something back to them that they were not ready to see in themselves. And so, instead of confronting their own deep-seated insecurity, they saw arrogance in your quiet confidence. Instead of owning their guilt, they saw judgment in your silence. Instead of recognizing their own neediness, they saw manipulation in your calm presence. Your very being became a screen for all the emotions they couldn't name, for the flaws they couldn't accept, and for the darkness they couldn't bear to hold. So, they painted you with the colors of their own shadow. You were never cruel. You were never false, but you were clear. And that clarity can feel like an act of violence to someone who has been lying to themselves for years. The truth is, you didn't hurt them. Your presence simply made them feel uncomfortably seen. And many people would rather label you as the toxic one than admit that your energy is simply awakening a painful truth within them. You're not carrying their darkness, but they will try to make you hold it, because it's always easier to blame the mirror than to face the reflection. Sign number 10. People confess to you, then disappear. This one is profoundly strange and can be painful. Someone opens up to you. They tell you things they swear they've never told another soul. They share their deepest traumas, their biggest regrets, their most unspoken thoughts. And for a moment, the connection feels incredibly real, raw, and human. You didn't ask for their secrets. You didn't pry. You just listened with a kind of presence, a kind of stillness that most people don't know how to hold. And then, they vanish. They stop texting back. They stop calling. They become distant, cold, almost as if that moment of intense connection never even happened. Jungian psychology would suggest that some people carry the archetype of the healer or the confessor, not because of what they do, but because of who they have become through their own inner work. You carry that energy, a field of emotional gravity that makes people feel safe. Safe enough to be real, safe enough to be vulnerable, safe enough to touch a part of themselves they normally keep locked away. But that safety comes with a price, because once someone sees their own pain in the mirror you provide, they are faced with a choice: grow from this newfound awareness or retreat back into denial. And most people sadly will retreat. They don't pull away because you did anything wrong. They pull away because they weren't ready for the revelation. Your presence didn't break them. It revealed them to themselves. And revelation without readiness just feels like exposure. You became a doorway to a version of themselves they weren't prepared to meet. And so, they walked away, not from you, but from the reflection of themselves they saw with you. You didn't lose the connection. You just made it too real, too fast. Sign number 11. You are the mirror they actively avoid. This sign is the culmination of many of the others. You don't confront people. You don't criticize them. You're not trying to teach, fix, or correct anyone. You're just there, present, grounded, and still. But you notice how people shift around you. They fidget, they talk too much, or they say far too little. And if you pay close attention, you'll notice they often avoid making direct eye contact. Because looking at you, really looking at you, feels too much like looking into themselves. Carl Jung's work confirms that the more you integrate your own shadow, the more you become a living mirror for those who have not. This isn't by intention, it's by contrast. Your presence doesn't reflect back their physical image. It reflects back their hidden truth, the anger they're suppressing, the fear they're denying, the dreams they've abandoned, the masks they wear every single day. You don't have to speak it, but they feel it. And what they feel, they often fear. When someone is not ready to confront themselves, even simple kindness can feel intrusive. Even your silence can feel invasive. Even your calm can feel confrontational. You are the mirror they never asked for but can't seem to forget. And so, they avoid you, not because you are dangerous, but because you are revealing. You don't show them who you are, you show them who they are not yet. And that kind of reflection is rare, uncomfortable, and utterly unforgettable. You are not misunderstood because you're unclear. You're misunderstood because you're too clear. And for people hiding from themselves, clarity feels like exposure, and exposure feels like pain. Sign number 12. You radiate unapologetic energy. You're not loud, you're not aggressive, you're not trying to dominate the space. But still, you feel like a lot to some people. Why? Because you no longer shrink. You don't soften your truth just to make others comfortable. You don't dilute your potent energy to fit in. You carry yourself with a quiet conviction, the kind that doesn't need to prove anything, because it's already rooted in something much deeper. Self-respect. Jung believed that when someone begins to embody their whole self, their light, their shadow, their contradictions, and all, they stop negotiating their right to exist. You've stopped apologizing for who you are. You've stopped editing your own voice to avoid causing tension. You've stopped making yourself small so that others can feel big, and that makes you a threat to anyone who has never known themselves without external approval. People might say you're intense, too opinionated, too sensitive, or too deep. But listen closely to what they're really saying. What they mean is, you are not easy to control. Your energy doesn't ask for permission. It just is, fully, authentically, and unapologetically. And in a world that is built on pleasing, performing, and pretending, that kind of presence feels like a major disruption. You didn't come here to play a role. You came here to live your truth. And your aura reflects that. So yes, you may be too much for those who have never met someone who won't bend to be liked. But for the ones who are also awake, they don't feel overwhelmed by your presence. They feel invited by it. Invited to rise, to remember, and to reclaim their own unapologetic truth. Sign number 13. You walk alone, but you are not lost. There's a space around you, a quietness, a distance that no one seems to enter, at least not for long. You've likely felt this for years, at school, at work, even among family and friends. It's not the loneliness of being unwanted, but the profound solitude of being unmatched. Carl Jung called the journey toward the true, whole self individuation. And he taught that those who walk this path often do so alone. Not because they are broken or unlovable, but because they have outgrown the noise, the masks, and the shallow connections that once felt like belonging. You simply see through too much now. You feel too deeply. You ask questions that make other people uncomfortable. And you carry an energy that cannot be contained by surface-level living. So you walk alone, but not in sadness. You walk in sovereignty. Because for you, solitude is no longer a punishment. It's a sign that you no longer chase closeness just to escape from yourself. A sign that your inner world has become rich enough to sustain you. A sign that your path isn't crowded because it was never meant for the crowd. People will misread you. They'll call you distant, guarded, or aloof. But the truth is, you're just rare. And rare souls don't travel in packs. They walk the edges, the spaces in between, the quiet roads where depth is the only true companion. You're not lost. You're not behind. You're not too late. You are just ahead of the curve, already living the kind of truth most people will never touch in their entire lifetime. And that kind of walk, it's meant to be quiet. So maybe now it all makes sense. The silence when you enter a room, the subtle glances, the tension, the distance that always seem to follow you. It was never about your words or your choices. It was your presence, your stillness, your clarity, your refusal to perform. You weren't trying to threaten anyone. You were just awake in a world that's still half asleep. Jung said that awakening begins the moment you confront the raw, unfiltered truth beneath the mask. And you did that. You walked through your shadow, you faced your chaos, and you reclaimed your soul. And when you returned, you glowed differently. Not louder, not brighter, but realer. And real is rare. Real is confronting. Real makes people squirm because it reflects everything they are not yet ready to see. You were never too much. You were never the villain. You were simply a mirror. And you didn't carry darkness, you carried light. But remember, when light enters a dark room for the first time, it doesn't always get applause. Sometimes it gets attacked, misunderstood, and pushed away because it exposes everything that was meant to stay hidden. But do not dim your light. Do not shrink. Do not apologize for the truth you carry. The very thing that makes you feel alone is the ultimate proof that you are finally becoming whole. Not everyone will understand you, and that's okay. They're not supposed to. Your path was never built for their approval. It was built for your awakening. So the next time they call you intense, intimidating, or too much, just smile to yourself. And remember, you weren't put here to make them comfortable. You were put here to remind them what truth feels like.